Judith, chapters 14 through 16. Then said Judith unto them, Hear me now, my brethren, and take this head, and hang it upon the highest place of your walls. And so, as soon as the morning shall appear, and the sun shall come forth upon the earth, take ye every one of his weapons, and go forth, every valiant man out of the city, and set ye a captain over them, as though ye would go down into the field toward the watch of the Assyrians, but go not down. Then they shall take their armor, and shall go into their camp, and raise up the captains of the army of Assur, and they shall run to the tent of Holofernes, but shall not find him. Then fear shall fall upon them, and they shall flee before your face. So ye and all that inherit the coast of Israel shall pursue them, and overthrow them as they go. But before you do these things, call me Achior the Ammonite, that he may see, and know him that despised the house of Israel, and that sent him to us, as it were, to his death. Then they called Achior out of the house of Ozias, and when he was come, and saw the head of Holofernes in a man's hand in the assembly of the people, he fell down on his face, and his spirit failed. But when they had recovered him, he fell at Judith's feet, and reverenced her, and said, Blessed art thou in all the tabernacle of Judah, and in all the nations, which hearing thy name shall be astonished. Now therefore, tell me all the things that thou hast done in these days. Then Judith declared unto him in the midst of the people all that she had done, from the day that she went forth until that hour she spake unto them. And when she had left off speaking, the people shouted with a loud voice, and made a joyful noise in their city. And when Achior had seen all that the God of Israel had done, he believed in God greatly, and circumcised the flesh of his foreskin, and which went into the house of Israel unto this day. And as soon as the morning arose, they hanged the head of Holofernes upon the wall, and every man took his weapons, and they went forth by bands unto the straits of the mountain. But when the Assyrians saw them, they sent to their leaders, which came to their captains and tribunes, and to every one of their rulers. So they came to Holofernes' tent, and said to him that had the charge of all his things, Waken now our lord, for the slaves have been bold to come down upon us to battle, that they may be utterly destroyed. Then went in Bagoas, and knocked at the door of the tent, for he thought that he had slept with Judith. But because none answered, he opened it, and went into the bedchamber, and found him cast upon the floor dead, and his head was taken from him. Therefore he cried with a loud voice, with weeping, and sighing, and a mighty cry, and rent his garments. After he went into the tent where Judith lodged, and when he found her not, he leaped out to the people, and cried, These slaves had dealt treacherously. One woman of the Hebrews hath brought shame upon the house of King Nabuchodonosor. For behold, Holofernes lieth upon the ground without a head. When the captains of the Assyrians' army heard these words, they rent their coats, and their minds were wonderfully troubled. And there was a cry, and a very great noise throughout the camp. And when they that were in the tents heard, they were astonished at the thing that was done. And fear and trembling fell upon them, so that there was no man that durst abide in the sight of his neighbor. But rushing out altogether, they fled into every way of the plain and of the hill country. They also that encamped in the mountains round about Bethuliah fled away. Then the children of Israel, every one that was a warrior among them, rushed out upon them. Then sent Ozias to Betomastham, and to Koi, and to Kola, and to all the coasts of Israel, such as should tell the things that were done, and that all should rush forth upon their enemies to destroy them. Now when the children of Israel heard it, they all fell upon them with one consent, and slew them unto Koi. Likewise, also they that came from Jerusalem, and from all the hill country, for men had told them what things were done in the camp of their enemies. And they that were in Gilead and in Galilee chased them with a great slaughter, until they were past Damascus and the borders thereof. And the residue that dwelt in Bethuliah fell upon the camp of Assur, and spoiled them, and were greatly enriched. And the children of Israel that returned from the slaughter had that which remained, and the villages and the cities that were in the mountains and in the plain got many spoils, for the multitude was very great. Then Joachim the high priest, and the ancients of the children of Israel that dwelt in Jerusalem, came to behold the good things that God had showed to Israel, and to see Judith, and to salute her. And when they came unto her, they blessed her with one accord, and said unto her, Thou art the exaltation of Israel. Thou art the great glory of Israel. Thou art the great rejoicing of our nation. Thou hast done all these things by thine hand. Thou hast done much good to Israel, and God is pleased therewith. Blessed be thou of the Almighty Lord forevermore. And all the people said, So be it, so be it. And the people spoiled the camp the space of 30 days, and they gave unto Judith Holofernes his tent, and all his plate, and beds, and vessels, and all his stuff. And she took it, and laid it on her mule, and made ready her carts, and laid them thereon. Then all the women of Israel ran together to see her, and blessed her, and made a dance among them for her. And she took branches in her hand, and gave also to the women that were with her. And they put a garland of olive upon her, and her maid that was with her. And she went before all the people in the dance, leading all the women, and all the men of Israel followed in their armor with garlands, and with songs in their mouths. Then Judith began to sing this thanksgiving in all Israel, and all the people sang after her this song of praise. And Judith said, Begin unto my God with timbrels, sing unto my Lord with cymbals, tune unto him a new psalm, exalt him, and call upon his name. For God breaketh the battles, for among the camps in the midst of the people he hath delivered me out of the hands of them that persecuted me. Assur came out of the mountains from the north. He came with 10,000s of his army, the multitude whereof stopped the torrents, and their horsemen have covered the hills. He bragged that he would burn up my borders, and kill my young men with the sword, and dash the sucking children against the ground, and make mine infants as a prey, and my virgins as a spoil. But the Almighty Lord hath disappointed them by the hand of a woman. For the mighty one did not fall by the young men, neither did the sons of the Titans smite him, nor high giants set upon him. But Judith, the daughter of Merari, weakened him with the beauty of her countenance. For she put off the garment of her widowhood for the exaltation of those that were oppressed in Israel, and anointed her face with ointment, and bound her hair in a tire, and took a linen garment to deceive him. Her sandals ravished his eyes, her beauty took his mind prisoner, and the falchion passed through his neck. The Persians quaked at her boldness, and the Medes were daunted at her hardiness. Then my afflicted shouted for joy, and my weak ones cried aloud, but they were astonished. These lifted up their voices, but they were overthrown. The sons of the damsels have pierced them through, and wounded them as fugitives' children. They perished by the battle of my Lord. I will sing unto my God a new song. O Lord, thou art great and glorious, wonderful in strength, and invincible. Let all creatures serve thee, for thou speakest, and they were made. Thou didst send forth thy Spirit, and it created them, and there is none that can resist thy voice. For the mountains shall be moved from their foundations with the waters, the rocks shall melt as wax at thy presence. Yet thou art merciful to them that fear thee. For all sacrifice is too little for a sweet savour unto thee, and all the fat is not sufficient for thy burnt offering. But he that feareth the Lord is great at all times. Woe to the nations that rise up against my kindred! The Lord Almighty will take vengeance of them in the day of judgment, in putting fire and worms in their flesh, and they shall feel them, and weep forever. Now, as soon as they entered into Jerusalem, they worshipped the Lord, and as soon as the people were purified, they offered their burnt offerings, and their free offerings, and their gifts. Judith also dedicated all the stuff of Holofernes which the people had given her, and gave the canopy which she had taken out of his bedchamber for a gift unto God. So the people continued feasting in Jerusalem before the sanctuary for the space of 3 months, and Judith remained with them. After this time every one returned to his own inheritance, and Judith went to Bethuliah, and remained in her own possession, and was in her time honorable in all her country. And many desired her, but none knew her all the days of her life, after that Manasseh her husband was dead, and was gathered to his people. But she increased more and more in honor, and waxed old in her husband's house, being 105 years old, and made her maid free. So she died in Bethuliah, and they buried her in the cave of her husband Manasseh. And the house of Israel lamented her 7 days, and before she died, she did distribute her goods to all them that were nearest of kindred to Manasseh her husband, and to them that were the nearest of her kindred. And there was none that made the children of Israel any more afraid in the days of Judith, nor a long time after her death. 4 Maccabees, chapter 3. The argument is exceedingly ridiculous, for reasoning does not appear to bear sway over its own affections, but over those of the body, in such a way as that any one of you may not be able to root out desire, but reasoning will enable you to avoid being enslaved to it. One may not be able to root out anger from the soul, but it is possible to withstand anger. Any one of you may not be able to eradicate malice, but reasoning has forced to work with you to prevent your yielding to malice. For reasoning is not an eradicator, but an antagonist of the passions. And this may be more clearly comprehended from the thirst of King David. For after David had been attacking the Philistines the whole day, he with the soldiers of his nation slew many of them. Then, when evening came, sweating and very weary, he came to the royal tent, about which the entire host of our ancestors was encamped. Now all the rest of them were at supper, but the king, being very much athirst, although he had numerous springs, could not by their means quench his thirst. But a certain irrational longing for the water in the enemy's camp grew stronger and fiercer upon him, and consumed him with languish. Wherefore his bodyguards, being troubled at this longing of the king, 2 valiant young soldiers, reverencing the desire of the king, put on their panoplies, and taking a pitcher, got over the ramparts of the enemies. And unperceived by the guardians of the gate, they went throughout the whole camp of the enemy in quest. And having boldly discovered the fountain, they filled out of it the draught for the king. But he, though parched up with thirst, reasoned that a draught reputed of equal value to blood would be terribly dangerous to his soul. Wherefore, setting up reasoning in opposition to his desire, he poured out the draught to God. For the temperate mind has power to conquer the pressure of the passions, and to quench the fires of excitement, and to wrestle down the pains of the body, however excessive, and through the excellency of reasoning, to abominate all the assaults of the passions. But the occasion now invites us to give an illustration of temperate reasoning from history. For at a time when our fathers were in possession of undisturbed peace through obedience to the law, and were prosperous, so that Seleucus Nicanor, the king of Asia, both assigned them money for divine service, and accepted their form of government. Then certain persons, bringing in new things contrary to the general unanimity, in various ways fell into calamities. The Acts of the Apostles, chapter 12. Now about that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James the brother of John with a sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison, and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. And when Herod would have brought him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison, and he smote Peter on the side, and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself, and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto him, Cast thy garment about thee, and follow me. And he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. When they were past the first and the second ward, they came unto the iron gate that leadeth unto the city, which opened to them of his own accord. And they went out, and passed on through one street, and forthwith the angel departed from him. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a surety that the Lord hath sent his angel, and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod, and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. And when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken, named Rhoda. And when she knew Peter's voice, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in, and told how Peter stood before the gate. And they said unto her, Thou art mad. But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, It is his angel. But Peter continued knocking, and when they had opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. But he, beckoning unto them with the hand to hold their peace, declared unto them that the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, Go show these things unto James and to the brethren. And he departed and went into another place. Now, as soon as it was day, there was no small stir among the soldiers, what was become of Peter. And when Herod had sought for him, and found him not, he examined the keepers, and commanded that they should be put to death. And he went down from Judea to Caesarea, and there abode. And Herod was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Sidon. But they came with one accord to him, and, having made Blastus, the king's chamberlain, their friend, desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country. And upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne, and made an oration unto them. And the people gave a shout, saying, It is the voice of a god, and not of a man. And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms, and gave up the ghost. But the word of God grew and multiplied. And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem, when they had fulfilled their ministry, and took with them John, whose surname was Mark.